As I walk through the valley of the shadow of doubt, I look myself. Ah, dang it, I messed up. Oh well. Anyway, hello, middies. Hope you guys all had a wonderful, wonderful Easter. Staying safe, staying healthy, all those good, all that good stuff. Staying busy. We're going to be going on to lesson 9 for our classwork. You should have the first 8 at this point should be completed. World War II projects are due on Tuesday, April 14th. I'll be sending out some reminders. Hopefully, you all have that done. If you have any questions on how to submit it to me, I can walk you through it. I've done a couple virtual meetings with students, and I've had a handful, but not everybody's been showing up for those. So if you have any questions, you need to attend those so I can answer your questions and kind of walk you through the process. So anyway, all right, so lesson 9, here we go, April 13th through the 17th. So here's your tasks for the week. Obviously you're watching this video right now, so listen to the video lecture. There could be two videos depending on how long this lecture lasts. So make sure that you watch both of them. If there is 2, we'll find out here in a little bit. Task 2, there'll be an ed puzzle. It won't be on this post. It'll be just like the other ones. It'll be just directly below this post. Task 3 will be a read the Korean War worksheet and complete the Google Doc. Again, no different from what we've done before. It'll be posted below this post as an assignment. And then task 4 is an exit ticket that is on this post. So notice this post, you have the Korean War reading. You'll have the Google form that you need to complete at the very end. And there'll be both video lectures. All right, so that's that. I'll show you guys really quick so you guys can see it. So here's the Ed puzzle after Hitler part 2. You'll be completing that. And you'll also complete the Korean War Google Doc. So here's the reading, Korean War reading, and then here's the doc. Again, very simple. Make sure you guys are doing the stuff on this doc and turn it in on Google Classroom. Most of you guys have been doing a pretty good job with that. All right, so anyway, that's the assignments. All right, so here's the video lecture. Here's some of the notes that we're going to be talking about this week. You guys had a little teaser last week with a little introduction into the Cold War. All right, so this is just some basics. We finished our World War II unit with the atom bomb. World War II at this point is now over, but there's an aftermath. There's a consequence. For us dropping the atom bomb and for how World War II played out, that leads the U.S. and the Soviet Union as being 2 of the greatest economic, political, and military powers in the world at this point. But they're both very, very, very different. The U.S. is a capitalist country, meaning that you can work your way up from the bottom and become rich, to make as much money as you can, supply and demand, all these things. And then you have Soviet Union is a communist country that believes in government controlled everything, that the government controls all the land, all the resources, all the properties, and you're there to serve the state. So there's 2 very different thoughts, and both sides are trying to influence the rest of the world and try to spread their beliefs across the world. All right, so time frame. What are we talking about here? 1945 to 1990. So for the next 45 years after World War II, the U.S. and the Soviet Union are going to be engaged in this Cold War. Now, why is it called Cold War? It's because there wasn't really a direct military conflict between the 2. That we became close, but it never really directly ended in a U.S. versus Soviet Union war. There were other wars that happened, like the Vietnam and Korean War, the war in Afghanistan for the Soviet Union, but it was never really engaged with the U.S. and the Soviet Union head-to-head against each other. All right, so that's that. All right, so what was our relationship like during World War II? Kind of going back a little bit. Don't forget, Stalin made an agreement with Hitler, and when that happened, the Western powers, U.S., Great Britain, France, although later the Soviet Union and Stalin will join the Allied powers, that really rubbed the Allied powers the wrong way, U.S., Great Britain, and France. Like, how can Stalin agree or make an alliance with Hitler with that kind of evil? But again, Hitler breaks the deal. Stalin will change sides. But I talked about this before. Just because Stalin will end up being on our side doesn't make us friends. We had a common enemy. in Hitler. At this point, the Soviet Union was communist. We hated communism. So although we were on the same side, we never really fully trusted each other. We didn't like each other. We didn't like Stalin. So kind of keep that in mind that the roots were already there once World War II was done for there to be some kind of conflict, which obviously there will be. All right, so remember, during a World War II unit, we talked about Yalta, the Yalta Conference. So before World War II ended, after the Battle of the Bulge, the big three meet. You see this last picture here where you have FDR. He passed away about a month later, but at this conference in Yalta, you have FDR, you have Churchill, and you have Stalin. And they meet to discuss, well, what's going to happen to Germany after World War II. So at this meeting, they discussed the establishment of the UN, or United Nations. This will essentially, it will replace the League of Nations. Go back to World War I. We did not join the League of Nations. The League of Nations was weak. All the countries that were in the League of Nations, which we weren't, refused. Remember, they were using appeasement. They didn't want to stop Hitler. They were trying to use peaceful and talking means to try and stop a conflict. So that's why the League wasn't really very effective. They didn't get involved in Manchuria once the Japanese invaded. Once they invaded China, they didn't get involved. When Italy invaded Ethiopia, the League of Nations didn't get involved. So they were very hands-off. So after World War II, the big three, they agreed that they needed to take more involvement and become more involved in the world with this new group called the UN. Essentially, it was a worldly alliance that was meant to protect and prevent future wars. They also agreed, okay, well, what do you do with Germany? After World War I, we severely punished Germany, we hammered them, and we basically left. That didn't work. So we agree with the Soviet Union that we need to split Germany into 4 zones and maintain a presence there. Now, why 4 zones? Well, the Soviet Union is communist, so they weren't willing to give U.S., Britain, France, which were capitalist countries, they weren't willing to give it to them because the Soviet Union, Stalin, they want to spread communism. They want more territory. They want a buffer zone, so to speak. They want to make sure that Germany can never invade them again. So think about that. Germany invaded Soviet Union twice, World War I, World War II. They want to control part of Germany to make sure they can't invade again. So in the U.S., we don't want to give it to the Soviet Union because we want to spread capitalism. We don't want communism to spread. So that's why we split up into 4 zones. 3, we made Stalin promise that he would allow free elections throughout Europe, throughout Eastern Europe. So like Ukraine and Poland and Romania, Bulgaria. He promised free elections, although it really won't play out that way. But at this conference, this is what they agreed to. And then the 4th thing they agreed to was that Russia would promise to join the war in Japan. So at this point, no really agreement was made about what to do with Poland at this point. But again, these were the main topics. All right, so what is the Cold War? What does it mean? It's a conflict between nations that does not involve direct military action, hence the term Cold War. So this is a war over political ideas, so communism versus democracy, and economic. You have capitalism versus communism, very different. And different ways of thinking. So this is a way over power. How can one best the other? Technology, sports, you name it. They were trying to outdo each other to show that they were superior. So again, the U.S. and the Soviet Union had different goals. So the U.S. is democratic. We believe in rights for the people and different freedoms, and we believe in capitalism, that things are individually owned, that entrepreneurs and people can invest and can use their ideas to create their own business. Whereas the Soviet Union, they believe in more of a dictatorship with Stalin, more government power, more government rule, government controls everything. So 2 very, very opposing different ways. All right, so what are our post-World War II Cold War goals for the United States? This is U.S. goals. 1 is to promote open markets for U.S. So we don't want the Great Depression to happen again. So we want to make sure that we're expanding and opening up new markets in Asia and in the Pacific Islands and in Europe. We want to make sure that we're selling our products to those nations to create an open trading market that will help U.S. businesses stay in business and create wealth and grow. We also want to make sure that we are trying to help promote democracy throughout the world, to make sure that countries that want democratic styles of government, that we're there to support them and help them. And you'll see some examples of that, as we'll talk about more in a little bit. So here's the overarching theme, our foreign policy. This term is very important. Star it, highlight it. You need to know it. Containment, 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 containment. So this is going to be their overarching goal. Contain communism. It's okay where it's at. So Soviet Union, they're communist. It's fine, but we can't let it spread. We can't let communism spread to new areas. So that's why we're going to be fighting in Vietnam. That's why we're going to be fighting in Korea in wars, because we are trying to prevent that from spreading to new areas. Communism will hurt our ability for open markets. If you're a communist, you aren't going to want to trade with us or buy U.S. products. So that's why that's why we're so invested in that. So think about this. Think of LeBron James. LeBron James is going to score 25, 30 points a game. That's just the way it is. He is going to get his. But your goal is to stop him from getting 60 points, 70 points, whatever. So he's going to get his, but try to do your best to make him shoot outside jumpers. That's containment. You know you can't stop him, but you have to contain him to that point range. You can't let him go off for 50. So it's basically the same thing. We can't. It exists. You just can't let it spread and get out of hand. So containment, very important term. All right. So what are the goals for the USSR? Their goal is to create greater security for itself. That they were invaded twice by Germany. So they've lost tens of millions of people throughout World War I and World War II. Stalin's purges that he did with the Stalin's famine. Tens of millions of people are dead. So he feared a strong Germany. So what he wanted to do was create borders that would allow them to help defend themselves. So if you look at this picture here, you got Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and here's West Germany. Here's the Soviet Union right here. So please just kind of follow along here. If Germany wanted to invade the Soviet Union again, Stalin's idea was, well, if he controls Poland, he controls all these countries here that are in this light green color. Germany has to go through that first before he gets to the Soviet Union. So if Stalin controls all these countries, that will create a buffer zone, so to speak, that they have to get through them before they get to the Soviet Union. So that's Stalin's main objective, is to control these Eastern European countries that border Germany to prevent another invasion again. That's very, 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 very important in terms of his goals. So he wants to create these friendly governments on these eastern borders, and he wants to convert these all into communist countries and basically take them over. And his goal is to spread communism across the world. So as this is going on in the late 40s and early 50s after World War II, Winston Churchill, he's warning the world. He actually comes to the United States and does a speech in Missouri, and he says Stalin has created an iron curtain. Now, guys, this iron curtain is not an actual structure. It's not a curtain. It's not a wall. It's an imaginary line, basically. So try to imagine this red line here. It's imaginary. This will separate communist nations over here on this side versus democratic nations on this side. So he says Stalin's creating this iron curtain. He's forcing these countries under his umbrella. He's forcing them into communists, not giving them free elections. And he coins the term iron curtain to describe what Stalin is doing. And Stalin does not take that very kindly, because this speech does not make him look very good. So this was Winston Churchill's iron curtain speech. All right. Then you have the Truman Doctrine. This was in 1947. President Truman, the same person that dropped the A-bomb in Japan, he basically has to prove it now. So how are you going to handle communism as it starts to spread? So the first main things that started happening was you started having these civil wars that started happening in Greece and Turkey, where communist rebels were trying to overthrow those governments. So Truman has a choice to make. Do you not do nothing and just talk tough talk? We're going to contain, or do you help? He's going to choose to help. So this term is called the Truman Doctrine, his pledge to support any country that is in need to fight against communism. So the goal of this is to containment, is to help countries to stop communism. This is done through the Truman Doctrine. All right, so that's it. We're going to go to video 2.